Isolation day 27, Tuesday the 14th of April. I hope everyone's well and you're looking after yourselves. So it's the day after the bank holiday weekend here, and for those of us that are working from home, we were back at work. I mentioned yesterday the plan was to track my bloods and do everything I needed to do. I had a pretty bad day of it actually. What I actually did was I spent the entire day working. So before I knew it, there were 5 hours had passed in the morning. I'd had a 10-minute lunch at my desk. I'd taken my blood once, and then another 5 hours had gone past. It does happen to me at times, and to a certain extent I fell off the wagon. I was reading something that said historically what people would do is they would go into diets or they would go into training routines and they would stick to it for a certain period of time, and then when they would fall off and they would decide, you know what, I'm just going to eat that, or I'm not going to go to the gym today, then they'd stay off and they wouldn't go back to it. But what's happening nowadays is that people are more inclined to go on their diet, to go on their training routine. If they fall off and they go out for a night on the beers, or they go out for a meal and they have chocolate after the meal, then they don't beat themselves up about it. The following day they're back at the gym, they're back on the diet, and they just crack on. So that's the modern way. So to a certain extent, I try not to beat myself up when I have a day like this. Now what I would say is it's really important as a type 1 person with diabetes is to get consistency. So consistency ideally over sleep, which is a massive problem. Again, I saw a post not 2 days ago that said that people with diabetes suffer with sleep, and they are 50% more likely to have broken sleep throughout the night. So it is what it is, but if you can be consistent in sleep, consistent in training, consistent in food, and consistent in your blood taking, then it goes a long way to managing your diabetes. I guess that's what we're all aiming for. Consistency is what we're aiming for. The problem with consistency at times is it can get boring and it can get monotonous, and it can be everything that isn't normal. That isn't what normal people do, but it's everything that we need to do to look after ourselves. What I'd like to do is to talk about the training element or the exercise element of the consistency that's required to manage and maintain decent blood sugars. As you've seen with me, I struggle quite a lot with maintaining my blood sugars when I go out and train. Now that may be due to the amount I train or how I train. There are different ways of training. Obviously there's the aerobic way of training, which is low intensity training done over a longer period of time, but from what I've read, that's no good for people with diabetes. Really, we need to get our hearts going. We need the anaerobic type of exercise, the fast-paced exercise. So if I train with weights, I train consistently and I train hard, and I don't take big breaks in between, because I want to get my heart rate up and the reason I want to get my heart rate up is to reduce bad cholesterol and look, there's a list here of reasons why we need to exercise. So from there you can see the reason why I want to get my heart rate up, and I originally read about this from Dr. Bernstein in his book Diabetes Solution, which is keep your heart rate up and it keeps you healthy. So if I run, I know I call it plodding. I plod because I'm over 40 years old, but the reality is I still run as hard as I can, and I do have a go at keeping up a decent pace. But if I train with weights as well, again, I train at a decent pace and I try not to take big breaks in between, and I try and get my heart rate up and get my blood pumping because I know it's healthy. If we have a look at this list, it helps to lower blood pressure and bad cholesterol. Exercise can be a positive effect on your mood, it can help you relieve stress, and exercise can improve your sleep. All of those things are really very important for us, but the major one is below, which is when we're looking at diabetes management, one of the most important benefits of that exercise is to increase insulin sensitivity. Now, insulin sensitivity is the whole basis and ethos of the Mastering Diabetes team. Okay, so what they're looking to do is improve insulin sensitivity for 1 million people. Insulin sensitivity, all that really is to be able to take less insulin for the same amount of food, or almost the holy grail, which would be less insulin for more food. Now, a significant part of the Mastering Diabetes ethos as well is the fact that if you eat the right foods with less fat in those foods, you can take less insulin and actually consume more foods, so much more higher carbs, which for me is completely alien. But it's an amazing thing to do, an amazing thing to try. So that's the major reason why, again, another major reason on top of the health benefits of not eating lots of food with fat in it. That's why I'm looking to transition from keto to low fat, plant-based, whole food diet. Standard advice that's out there says, and I'll also put a link below, that to exercise and not get your a low blood sugar, you need to do a number of things. The overriding thing is that everyone is an individual. So there are no, and you can see top of this list says, note, this is not a rule of thumb. So this is just general guidance. If your blood sugar is less than 5, and you can't drive if your blood sugar is less than 5, so you probably shouldn't be running, ingest 10 to 20 grams of carbs before exercise and delay until your blood sugar is above 5. If your blood sugars are between 5 and 8, which mine generally are when I train, ingest 10 grams of carbs before exercise and then exercise can be started. Well, I think you've seen on numerous occasions that doesn't work for me, but mainly that would be down to perhaps the intensity of the workouts that I'm doing, because my blood sugars don't just go low, but they consistently go low and then they will continue to drop for another hour or two afterwards. The next two sort of slides aren't applicable for me, but they might be applicable for you. If your bloods are between 8 and 15, what it's suggesting here is you can do low intensity exercise. My suggestion would be, what's the point in doing low intensity exercise? Unless you are, I say, what's the point? If you're older than me, then low intensity exercise, of course, would be applicable. Any exercise is good. You know, walking is good for you. You know, some of the guidance in this link says get off the bus or the tube a stop before and walk to work. You know, that's not bad advice at all. But in order for me, at my age, and what I think is best for people is get your heart rate going, okay? Some exercise is better than no exercise. Completely take that on board. And then they've got some guidance about if your blood's above 15. If your blood's above 15, for me, I'd be a bit more concerned than actually I'm just going to go and have a run. Really, I'd be checking for ketones and ensuring that you're not going into ketoacidosis, really. So I'd be taking a shed load of insulin to reduce my bloods. The interesting part of this guidance, and it is just guidance, and again is, let me reiterate, what they say in the link is that everyone's an individual and you have to test to know how exercise affects you. And to a certain extent, I take that on board. What I want to look at is, this is the guidance now. So I'm going to present this guidance to you. What I'm also going to do is read the Mastering Diabetes book, and I'm booked on the do-it-yourself course. I'm then going to present to you guys what the Mastering Diabetes view is about exercise, and their view is very clear to a certain extent. I haven't read into it a huge amount, but both Cyrus and Robbie, they train consistently every week, every day of every week. They try to train every day of every week, but their advice is that in order to have the best insulin sensitivity, you have to exercise. The other more significant part of this advice is meal timings, and I think this is where I'm going wrong, because they talk about the active insulin on board, so IOB, insulin on board, and the insulin on board, if I show you on the pump, is there, and it's active insulin, and it says it at the bottom. But the guidance here, and I'll read it to you, it says eating 3 hours before training session. The action of most rapid acting insulins is 3 to 4 hours. Well, I'm on Humalog, and I know that mine works between 3 and 4 hours, which means that insulin bolus, so basal is your background, bolus is your insulin for your food, just in case you don't know. It should be taken 3 hours before a training session, will have little impact on that session. So what they're saying is you shouldn't really have any active insulin on board in order to have little impact on the session. But what they also say is the kind of food that they expect you to be eating, which is minimally processed, low glycemic. So good choices is oats, muesli, root vegetables, boiled potatoes or sweet potatoes. Well, at the moment, I don't eat any of those things because those are all high carb. Granted, when they say low glycemic index, what they mean is that it affects your blood sugars over a longer period of time. It doesn't give you that whopping great increase, which could affect your blood sugars badly and make them shoot sky high. Then we go on to eating 2 hours before a training session, and then there's eating 30 minutes before a training session. The guidance here, the overriding guidance is Everyone's an individual, so you've just got to test for it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try the top one. So I'm going to eat 3 hours before I train, and then we're going to see. And then I'm going to eat 2 hours before I train, and then we're going to see. And I'm also going to take the 10 to 20 grams of carbs and ensure that I follow that guidance as well. And then we'll see. But over the next week, that's what I'm planning to do. So I hope that gives you a bit of guidance on why exercise is so important for us, and also the struggle that I have with controlling my blood sugars when exercising, because that's what happens. You know, everyone's an individual. Have a good day tomorrow, and I will catch up with you soon. Look after yourselves.